Hi, everybody. I wanted to talk to you today about one of my studies that I did in 2016 with some great students. It's called Women Growing Older with Environmental Sensitivities, a Grounded Theory Model. So I'm sharing you my screen, and I'm going to make this into a slideshow. Okay, Women Growing Older with Environmental Sensitivities, a Grounded Theory Model. This was published in Healthcare for Women International in 2016, and I got to work with two great students, Mary Kate Horan and Jacqueline Billy. And what we did was we did a grounded theory phone interview study of 21 women with environmental sensitivities. I'll explain what that means in a minute. We used Charmaz's constructivist grounded theory, and we sought a theory regarding aging with environmental sensitivities. Now, grounded theory is a way of looking at the facts, working from the ground up. You don't go in with a hypothesis. You go in and you listen to what people say, and you use coding. We interviewed people on tape and then transcribed their interviews. And we used 3 coding levels: incident, focused, and theoretical. Incident is a very small unit of coding. You underline a word, something someone says, and then you put this together with what other people are saying, and you come up with something that then can get a little larger and be a focused theme. And then finally you go to the theoretical level and you get a larger overarching theme. So we worked as a team with each member coding each interview independently with incident coding. And then we met to compare and mesh our codes. And we used the constant comparative method, where your codes are compared within the same interview, but also across with other interviews. So the approach was both critical, meaning we did not accept what Glasser and Strauss call the proper line, or the way that hegemony sees things. And it was also feminist. So our participants were 21 women over the age of 65 with chemical or electrical sensitivities, or both. We sought participants from my research website and in newsletters and on websites of support organizations. All were from the US. 19 were Caucasian, 1 Latina, and 1 other. 12 had chemical sensitivity. 9 had both chemical sensitivity and electrical sensitivity. 17 were not employed. The mean age was 68.5, and people had had sensitivities for a mean of 23.3 years. Their education included 8 higher degrees, 1 4-year degree, 1 technical degree, 1 high school diploma, and 4 people had some college. So our procedure included receiving approval from our institutional review board at James Madison. We did the phone interviews that lasted between 20 minutes to an hour. Questions were general, so interviewees could determine the direction of the interview. One was, as you grow older with sensitivities, can you tell us about any concerns you may have about how your needs will be met? And the second was, what do you perceive as your major needs at this point? Are they met now, and will they change as you grow older? So our results included what we called a central process. And we named this Balancing on a Changing Tightrope with Great Overwhelm Regarding How Long One Might Be Able to Stay Up. If that sounds hair-raising, it was. And this is the study of every study I've done. This is the one that keeps me up at night, because this made me label exactly what was going on. The 3 categories that we found within that process included having no safety net, the knowing, and going through the cracks. And I'll say a couple words about each of those. Aging without a safety net. For the most part, some of these people looked very normal, but they were going through life without most of the services, resources, and inputs that most take for granted in developed countries. Informants had seen others, quote, go under, and knew that taken for granted resource in this culture, usually available to the aged, was not available for them. It was not an option for them. Their concerns related to potential hospitalization, nursing home placement, treating comorbid illnesses, The greatest expressed fears included need for surgery or hospitalization. Comorbid illnesses such as asthma or fibromyalgia created even more need for services that they could not tolerate. Excuse me. Finding, acquiring, and keeping a safe home was a great concern. You have the upkeep, you have keeping the home safe from chemicals and EMFs. Things change. Neighbors move in, people put up cell towers. It was a lot to think about. Social support was scarce and much was done via phone or internet. Many had families that were geographically or emotionally distant. Other concerns included driving. Could they keep driving? Could they keep a safe car? Could they get help with housework if they should need it? This one quote embodied what a lot of people were saying here. How will your needs be met? I don't believe they will be met. So the second theme I call the knowing. This was a traumatic knowing that they had little to no control over what would happen to them as they aged. They watched themselves decline, experienced harbingers of what was to come. I called this the watchful waiting. There was an escalation of concern as they aged, as they had seen others die in nursing homes. It's hard to clarify the intersection of aging and contested illness, as some believed that their concerns were the same as other older persons, that aging takes precedence over the sensitivities. Other people did not believe this, as so many community resources were just unavailable to them. The going through the cracks, most informants were limited to home to avoid exposures. Most everywhere posed some problem, from food allergies and perfumes in restaurants to pesticides in cities to EMFs to in offices. But respondents found ways to function that we described as going through the cracks. There were always some places or activities that could be assessed, even if only one's own garden. The resourcefulness of people was amazing, really. For example, one woman was part of a telephone group that performed conference call musicals. You don't see those every day. Many lived moment by moment. They had the knowing, but they were able to live appreciating what they were able to do. And sometimes this went into a giving in and just living in the moment. And this quote embodies that. It's a day-by-day system, and living with MCS is so unpredictable that all the things you try and all the things you want to do and all the things you make to save your ass don't work. And the way I've learned to live and to negotiate life is to surrender and giving up dreams, hopes, plans, and just saying, oh, whatever today brings, today brings. Charmas described living one day at a time as a strategy for the chronically ill to face uncertainty. It may resemble our participants living in the moment. The role of overwhelm may catapult people into this mindset. So there are many negatives here, but all had some exceptions. Some people had good families, were able to drive, and had good friends. It's important to remember that the aging came on the heels of having already performed the invisible tightrope act, sometimes for 20 to 30 years. Because the lack of a net is invisible, their concerns appear similar to those of other older persons, but the traumatic knowing that one is out of the equation, even for services that no one wants, such as hospitalization and nursing home care, places a traumatic stress on the person and sets them apart. The coping processes put in place to survive environmental sensitivities are challenged by the process of aging and threaten to break down. For example, one woman had a garden to socialize in, but doing that required maintaining that garden as she aged. So a comment about, the vulnerability of women with ES, grounded theory helped us to contextualize and remember our data in a succinct fashion, and that is what it was designed for. Given that 70% of US women over 75 are widowed, divorced, or single, the majority of older women do not have anyone in their lives as partners. Women with ES comprise a particularly vulnerable group for whom no cultural resources exist. From a social justice perspective and that of critical research, Having to age with literally none of the usual supports and safety nets in place is unacceptable. Despite the warnings and pleadings of multiple researchers and writers, medical treatment or even validation for ES is still rare. It has been 70 years since Theron Randolph treated US persons with the petrochemical problem that manifested in symptoms for his medical patients. We are still waiting for appropriate inclusivity and useful treatment for this population that lives with a disability that challenges hegemonic thinking. So here are my few references and other resources. I hope you'll check out my research website, mcsresearch.net, or my book. It goes to the same website, earthdrivebooks.com. You can read my book or download it for free. And my other YouTube videos, chemical and electrical sensitivities in the workplace, and MCS and identity. So thank you so much for listening today.